Mr. Trump's youngest son, Barron, apparently now will not be a delegate at the RNC this summer. Barron has come up quite a bit during this trial.
A moment in modern history that will be remembered as one of the most contentious and polarizing moments is the presidential election that will take place in the United States in 2024. Donald Trump's triumph over Kamala Harris and his return to the political arena captured the attention of a nation that is deeply divided along political lines. Barron Trump, a figure who is frequently shrouded in relative mystery, stepped into the spotlight and made a statement that confirmed long-held suspicions about his father. This occurred against the backdrop of the celebration and controversy that was taking place. His confession was not merely a private matter, rather it served to reverberate throughout the political landscape, thereby adding fuel to the fire of discussions concerning the legacy of Donald Trump. Click the like and subscribe buttons before we begin so that you can receive additional exclusive news. Over the course of his formative years, Barron Trump had spent the majority of his time on the margins of public life. He is now a young adult who is articulate and composed. Barron Trump remained largely silent throughout his siblings' participation in the political and business empire that the Trump family had established under their leadership. Because of his silence, many people were left wondering what role, if any, he played behind the scenes. This silence only served to add to his mystique. Barron broke his silence in a moment that stunned supporters, critics, and commentators alike. This occurred as his father was celebrating his second electoral victory. In addition to being impactful, the timing of Barron's statement was deliberate and well thought out. The campaign of Donald Trump, which was characterized by its familiar blend of populist rhetoric, policy promises, and a fierce opposition to the political establishment, had made it possible for him to secure another term in the White House. Kamala Harris was unable to overcome Trump's enduring appeal among his core supporters, despite the fact that she made tremendous efforts to galvanize the Democratic base and present a vision that would bring the party together. Barron stood behind Trump on election night, his expression composed but thoughtful as he took the stage to deliver his victory speech. Trump was delivering his speech to celebrate his victory. An admission that would dominate headlines for days to come was made by this once shy figure, and the nation watched as he took the initiative to step forward and make it. Barron's words did not reflect the jubilant spirit that was present throughout the evening. Instead, they carried with them an undercurrent of introspection, an acknowledgement of the complexities that surrounded his father's rise to power and his continued hold on power. Between the larger-than-life persona that was portrayed in the media and the man he knew as his father, he admitted that he had struggled for years with the public's perception of Donald Trump. He was torn between the two characteristics of Trump. Barron suggested that his father's motivations were much more personal and rooted in a relentless drive to prove his worth. This was in contrast to the widespread perception that Donald Trump was a master manipulator of public opinion and a figurehead for a political movement that was divisive. The revelation struck a chord with millions of people who had been speculating for a considerable amount of time about the psychological foundations of Donald Trump's political aspirations. Barron described his father as a man who had been profoundly influenced by a culture that placed an emphasis on tenacity, success, and unwavering determination above all else for the most part. Additionally, he suggested that this worldview had not only been the driving force behind Donald Trump's business empire, but that it had also become the foundation of his political identity. The revelation added a new layer of complexity to the narrative surrounding Donald Trump, providing insights into the personal dynamics that fueled one of the most divisive leaders in the history of the United States. As a result of Barron's remarks, supporters of Donald Trump were able to receive confirmation of their conviction that their leader was motivated by a genuine desire to achieve success and restore the greatness of the United States. To them, his unconventional approach to politics and governance was a manifestation of his genuineness. It was a rejection of the scripted and polished demeanor that is typical of traditional politicians. Barron's statement provided further support for the notion that Donald Trump's tenacity and determination originated from a profoundly personal place, which is what makes his political victories all the more remarkable. The admission made by Barron, on the other hand, was interpreted differently by critics. Their suspicions were confirmed, and they believed that Donald Trump's political career was less about serving the people and more about achieving his own personal goals of becoming president. It was argued by them that his policies, rhetoric, and style of governance were all designed to bolster his image rather than to address the most pressing issues facing the nation. Trump's presidency was seen by some as an exercise in self-promotion and a pursuit of legacy, and Barron's acknowledgement of his father's motivations provided fodder for those who held this view. It is important to note that the implications of Barron's statement went beyond the realm of political commentary. As a result, many people were compelled to reevaluate their conception of what it means to be a leader in a democratic society. It sparked conversations about the intersection of personal ambition and public service, a political movement that thrived on disruption and defied conventional norms, achieved a victory with the return of Donald Trump to the White House that marked a triumph for the movement. Barron's admission, on the other hand, served to remind the nation that, beneath the spectacle and controversy, there was a profoundly human story of a man who was driven by the desire to demonstrate his worth. Barron's part in the Trump narrative also took on new significance as a result of his statement, which was taken into consideration. He had been perceived for many years as a reluctant participant in his father's political journey, frequently appearing in the background with an air of quiet detachment. This perception persisted for a few years. It was a turning point when he made the decision to speak out, as it indicated that he was willing to engage with the public and share his perspective on one of the most controversial figures of the modern era. Through his actions, he was able to carve out a special place for himself, which was distinct from the more outspoken and politically engaged siblings he had. The reaction of the general public to Barron's statement was just as divided as the response to the election itself. The supporters of Donald Trump praised his son for providing a personal and introspective view of his father's character. They also praised his son for his eloquence and maturity. As far as they were concerned, Barron's statements were a demonstration of the resilience of the Trump family and their capacity to withstand the unrelenting scrutiny that comes with public life. His statement, on the other hand, was seen by critics as a calculated move that was intended to humanize Donald Trump and divert attention away from the controversies that have surrounded his presidency. The media frenzy that surrounded Barron's admission highlighted the everlasting fascination with the Trump family and the role that they play in shaping the political landscape. Analysts dissected his words, looking for hidden meanings and implications for the future in relation to his statements. Barron Trump, like his father and siblings, might one day want to take on a more active role in politics, just like his father did. The alternative is that he would continue to be a mysterious figure, content to observe from the sidelines. In a political drama that was already quite dramatic, these questions added yet another layer of mysteries to the situation. In addition, Barron's statement brought to light the generational divide that exists within the Trump family, as well as the different approaches that each generation takes to public life. While Barron's older siblings had embraced the spotlight and used their platforms to advance their father's agenda, Barron's tone was measured and introspective, which set him apart from his siblings. This level of self-awareness resonated with younger generations, many of whom struggled to reconcile their own values with the political realities of the Trump era. His willingness to confront the complexities of his father's character and legacy suggested that he had reached a level of self-awareness that resonated with younger generations. As the evening of Donald Trump's victory in 2024 progressed, the significance of Barron Trump's open revelation became more and more apparent with each passing moment. In spite of the fact that his initial statement was able to immediately capture the attention of the public and the media, the implications of his statement went well beyond the stage of a celebratory rally. In the process of peeling back the layers of this unprecedented acknowledgement, deeper societal questions regarding the nature of power, legacy, and the human cost of political ambition were revealed. In the days that followed the election, the focus of attention sharply shifted towards Barron, who had been protected for a considerable amount of time by the thick walls of family mystique, but who now found himself in the middle of a cultural earthquake. In spite of the fact that the Trump dynasty is known for making bold statements and taking controversial positions, they have rarely shown any signs of vulnerability. Beginning with the moment that Donald Trump descended the escalator in 2015 to announce his first presidential campaign, the family presented a unified front that was defiant, confident, and appeared to be impervious to criticism. The Trump brand was built on this image, which had been painstakingly cultivated over the course of several decades. This narrative was carefully maintained, but Barron's decision to open a window into the personal psyche of his father stood in stark contrast to this narrative. It appeared as though a single brick had been removed from a towering structure, which created concerns regarding the structural integrity of the building that was still standing. The manner in which Barron's tone was distinct from that of his father and siblings was the aspect of his development that became the most noticeable. A public persona that is characterized by dominance and assertiveness is that of Donald Trump. These characteristics are frequently reflected in Ivanka, Eric, and Don Jr., who are acting out their roles as heirs to a legacy that is larger than life. Barron, on the other hand, displayed a tone that was dissimilar to the conventional Trump discourse because he was reserved, reflective, and measured. Audiences who were not used to hearing anything other than roaring self-assurance from the family were captivated by this shift. The introspection of Barron stood out as a contrast to the bold declarations made by his father, and it provided the nation with a moment of reflection to consider the motivations that lie behind the Trump political machine. As the analysis began to pour in, commentators pointed out that Barron's statements might be a sign of the emergence of a new kind of leadership within the Trump family, one that prioritized nuance and reflection over confrontation. The mere existence of this possibility sparked a heated debate. Could the manner in which Barron conducts himself be an indication of a change in the way the Trump dynasty approaches public engagement? Could it have been that this was just a fleeting moment of honesty from a young man who was struggling to deal with the weight of his family name? Barron's willingness to acknowledge the complexities of his father's persona was a refreshing departure for many people. For them, it offered a perspective that felt less rehearsed and more human. It was clear that Barron's admission would have significant repercussions for politics. An additional layer of admiration for the family was added by those who support Donald Trump as a result of this moment. They took Barron's comments as evidence that the Trumps were able to maintain a profound sense of self-awareness and a strong sense of familial loyalty, even in the face of the pressures that come with living a political life. They argued that this made the family even more relatable to members of the average American population. Those who are opposed to Trump, on the other hand, took advantage of the opportunity to emphasize what they considered to be the inherent self-interest that is driving his presidency. According to their point of view, the fact that Barron acknowledged his father's unyielding ambition became evidence of the transactional nature of Trump's leadership. The words of Barron reverberated on a cultural level that extended beyond the realm of partisan interpretations. His willingness to address the personal aspects of his father's leadership struck a chord in an era that is becoming increasingly characterized by transparency and authenticity. Americans, regardless of their political affiliation, were drawn to the rare glimpse into the personal struggles of a family that had become emblematic of power and privilege. This was a captivating experience for all Americans. For a brief moment, this humanization, regardless of whether it was perceived as genuine or strategic, transcended the polarization that was present in the election itself. It was especially noteworthy how younger generations responded to the news. Barron was a new face for voters who were members of the Millennial and Gen Z generations, and who had grown up in a world that was shaped by the divisive presence of Trump. The decision that he made to speak from the heart rather than reciting political talking points was in line with their values of individual expression and authenticity. Discussions about Barron's statement on various social media platforms frequently included expressions of admiration for his bravery in stepping outside the shadow of his father's dominant legacy. Despite the fact that some people thought his remarks were calculated, others saw them as an indication of a generational shift, which suggests that the future of the Trump name could look very different from what it would have looked like in the past. Nevertheless, this period of philosophical reflection on culture was not devoid of critics. Barron was accused of being naive by his detractors, who questioned whether or not his remarks were truly his own, or whether they were part of a larger strategy that was orchestrated by the family. There was a plethora of conspiracy theories, with some people speculating that Barron's appearance was a carefully timed maneuver to soften Donald Trump's image and appeal to voters who were undecided in the final days of the campaign. The cynicism that had come to define public discourse in the era of Trump was brought to light by these claims, despite the fact that they were not supported by evidence. In the midst of the whirlwind of analysis and speculation, it was simple to lose sight of the personal toll that this moment most likely exacted on Barron himself. When he was only 18 years old, he had already spent a significant portion of his life living under the unrelenting gaze of the public. Each and every one of his actions, from his appearances at state functions to his interactions with members of his family, had been dissected and evaluated. When Barron made the decision to speak out, he was not only exposing his own vulnerabilities, but he was also providing an opportunity for further investigation into his relationship with his father. As courageous as this decision was, it marked a turning point in his life, transforming him from a figure on the periphery of the Trump narrative into an active participant in the narrative. The significance of Barron's words gradually expanded to encompass the broader context of the election that will take place in 2024 as they reverberated throughout the political and cultural spheres. It is a testament to Donald Trump's enduring appeal among a significant portion of the electorate that he was able to defeat Kamala Harris in the election. It turned out that his ability to rally supporters with promises of economic revitalization, national security, and a return to traditional values was just as effective as it had been in the past. Barron's statement, on the other hand, subtly reframed this narrative by implying that beneath the political slogans lay a profoundly personal drive that had influenced the actions of his father. Both Trump supporters and his opponents were confronted with discomforting questions as a result of this reframe. It compelled supporters to come to terms with the possibility that the motivations of their leaders might be more nuanced and self-serving than they had previously believed. The simplistic view of Donald Trump as a one-dimensional villain was challenged by this film, which revealed a man whose insecurities and ambitions were similar to those of many other people who had risen to power before him. This dichotomy, in which Trump is portrayed as both a populist hero and a deeply flawed individual, emerged as a central topic of discussion in the aftermath of the election. Barron's statement was followed by a period of time during which speculation regarding his potential future role in the Trump legacy began to accumulate. Would it be possible for him to follow in his father's footsteps and enter the political arena, thereby bringing the family brand into a new era? Alternatively, would he choose to take a different path? These questions sparked conversations about the generational dynamics that exist within the Trump family. In addition, the emergence of Barron prompted a reassessment of the part that family dynamics play in the formation of political figures. Throughout the course of history, the influence of close relatives on the decisions made by leaders has frequently been ignored in favor of concentrating on public rhetoric and policy. The statement made by Barron served as a timely reminder that behind every political figure is a complex web of relationships and experiences that profoundly influence the motivations and actions that they take. In the case of Donald Trump, his family has always been at the center of his public image. However, the words of Barron brought this dynamic into sharper focus. The United States of America awoke to a political landscape that was both strikingly familiar and profoundly transformed the morning after Donald Trump's dramatic victory over Kamala Harris on election night. As a result of the events that took place, the streets were filled with reactions, social media was flooded with debates, and news outlets were producing thin pieces that dissected every aspect of what had taken place. Nevertheless, in the midst of the chaos of celebration, protest, and analysis, the shocking revelations that Barron Trump made the night before continued to dominate the conversation. Barron's candid admission opened a new chapter, one that added depth, humanity, and a touch of vulnerability to the often larger-than-life Trump legacy. If his father's political triumph represented a reassertion of Trumpism in American politics, then Barron's admission opened a new chapter. A profound reassessment of the Trump brand took place in the days that followed Barron's admission, which was a significant development. Barron's words suggested that there was a more introspective side to the family, despite the fact that the world had come to know Donald Trump as a political juggernaut who thrived on controversy and public confrontation. A great number of people became fascinated by this viewpoint, and commentators began to investigate the ways in which this new narrative could potentially influence not only Donald Trump's presidency, but also the future of all families. The contrast between Barron's quieter, more reflective tone and Donald's bombastic persona only served to add to the mystery that was already present as a result. The choice that Barron made to speak up on such a momentous evening not only amplified the impact of his words, but it also added a new layer of symbolism to the victory that his father had achieved. The scene was illustrative of a dynasty that was at a time of transition. In the same way that Donald Trump's re-election demonstrated the enduring power of his populist movement, Barron's emergence hinted at the possibility of a change in the way that the family approaches public life. A nation that is still reeling from one of the most hotly contested elections in its history was captivated by the interplay between these two narratives, which included the familiar Trumpism of the patriarch and the nuanced introspection of his youngest son. Barron's statement also served as a lens through which many people started to reevaluate the more far-reaching implications of Donald Trump's return to the presidency. In the midst of his supporters' celebration of yet another victory for their political movement, others pondered the psychological and familial aspects of his leadership. Barron's admission that his father had a deep-seated desire to prove himself shed light on the personal motivations that had been driving Donald Trump's rise to power for a considerable amount of time. The disclosure of this information allowed for a more compassionate comprehension of a man who, despite the fact that he had a divisive influence on American society, remained profoundly human at his core. The cultural repercussions of Barron's statements extended far beyond the realm of politics that was immediately relevant to them. The public's perception of the Trumps was given a new dimension as a result of his statement, which occurred in a society that is becoming more and more fascinated by the inner workings of powerful families. It was suddenly apparent that the family, which was frequently portrayed as a single entity, was more complicated and multifaceted. Among the younger generation of Americans, this shift in perception was especially significant because many of them had become disillusioned with the extreme partisanship that had been prevalent in recent years. Barron's willingness to engage with the emotional and psychological realities of his father's character struck a chord with a generation that places a higher value on authenticity and introspection than it does on bravado and performative rhetoric. During the course of the media's investigation into the repercussions of Barron's statement, one question has been brought up repeatedly. What part would he play in determining the Trump legacy's trajectory in the years to come? Barron had remained largely in the background throughout the entirety of Donald Trump's first presidency, in contrast to his older siblings, who had enthusiastically embraced the family's political and business endeavors. The sudden emergence of his voice within the family, as one that was thoughtful and reflective, raised the possibility that he might take on a more active role in the years to come. Many people were curious about whether Barron's approach would be a departure from the combative style that had come to define the Trump brand. This speculation fueled intense interest, and many people wondered whether it would be a departure. The comments made by Barron also sparked a renewed interest in the dynamics that exist within the Trump family to begin with. Despite the fact that a great deal of literature had been written about the roles that Ivanka, Don Jr., and Eric played in their father's political and business endeavors, Barron's point of view added a new layer of complexity to the story. In light of the fact that he was the youngest member of the Trump family, his experiences and observations provided a new perspective through which to examine the Trump regime. His decision to speak out indicated a level of independence and self-awareness that differentiated him from his siblings, many of whom had constructed their public personas around unwavering loyalty to their father's vision. His decision to speak out was something that set him apart from his siblings. In the wake of Barron's statement, the generational divide that exists within the Trump family has emerged as a central topic of discussion and speculation. Barron's tone suggested a more introspective approach. In contrast to the way that Donald Trump and his older children had built their careers on a foundation of unapologetic ambition and public spectacle at the beginning of their adult lives. Important questions were raised as a result of this divergence regarding the ways in which generational differences may influence the future of the Trump legacy. For example, would Barron's point of view indicate a change in the public's perception of the family, or would it continue to be a singular occurrence within a narrative that is otherwise consistent? Additionally, the emergence of Barron brought to light the changing role that families play in American politics, as observed by political observers. Despite the fact that political dynasties have been a part of the landscape of the United States for a very long time, the Trump family stands out due to their exceptional combination of celebrity, business acumen, and political influence. This dynamic was given a new dimension by Barron's willingness to share his thoughts, which brought to light the ways in which personal relationships and familial bonds can influence how the general public views leadership. His remarks served as a timely reminder that behind every political figure is a complex web of personal influences and motivations that are frequently hidden from the view of the general public. The public's reaction to Barron's statement was filled with a wide range of opinions, just like the electorate overall. In the midst of an otherwise turbulent political season, his words were seen by some as a moment of clarity and humanity. His admission of his father's shortcomings and reasons for doing things struck a chord with those individuals who had been looking for a more nuanced understanding of Donald Trump's method of leadership for a long time. Barron's comments, on the other hand, were met with skepticism by some individuals, who interpreted them as a calculated attempt to soften the image of the family in the wake of a contentious election. The extent to which the Trump family had become a lightning rod for cultural and political debates was highlighted by this polarization, which mirrored the larger divisions that exist within American society. A more in-depth investigation into the psychological toll that public life takes was prompted by Barron's statement, which was made in the midst of the debates and speculation. The fact that Barron spent his childhood in the shadow of one of the most divisive figures in the world was unquestionably a one-of-a-kind experience that profoundly influenced the way he perspectives the world. Even in the face of intense scrutiny, he made the decision to speak out on the night of his father's victory, which suggested that he wanted to assert his own identity and share his truth. A great number of people were moved by this act of vulnerability, which served as a reminder that even those who are born into privilege are not immune to the pressures that come with living in public life. Barron's words had equally significant repercussions for society as a whole through their wider implications. In an era that was characterized by rapid change and intense polarization, the fact that he was willing to engage with the complexities of his father's character provided a rare opportunity for introspection. It served as a great reminder that leadership, regardless of whether it is in the realm of politics, business, or any other field, is ultimately an endeavor that is deeply human. A more empathic and nuanced approach to evaluating those in positions of authority was encouraged by Barron's remarks, which brought to light the significance of comprehending the personal aspects of leadership. As the weeks went by, the statement that Barron Trump made on election night continued to reverberate throughout political and cultural discourse, adding a new layer of mystery to the upcoming return of Donald Trump to the White House. He spoke in a straightforward manner, which brought to light the complexities of the Trump legacy, which is characterized by ambition, resilience, and unrelenting drive. The infrequent public reflection that Barron offered provided a glimpse into the inner workings of a family that has been perceived for a long time as being singularly united in purpose. The carefully curated image of the Trumps was thrown off by his remarks, which added elements of authenticity and dimension to the situation. His words were interpreted by some as an act of defiance, while others saw them as an attempt to bridge the gap between public perception and private realities. Barron's introspection may have subtly influenced his father's presidency, according to political historians, who began to investigate the influence of familial dynamics on leadership, in contrast to the bold and aggressive manner in which his father and siblings carried themselves. Barron's emergence struck a chord with a younger generation. Speculation about the future of the Trump dynasty was sparked as a result of his openness, which coincided with a larger cultural shift that placed a higher value on vulnerability and independent expression. To what extent does Barron's reflective leadership style indicate a shift in generational dynamics? A wider discussion about leadership and humanity was sparked as a result of his statement, which extended beyond the Trump family. Barron challenged the polarized views that are typically associated with political figures by recognizing the complexities that his father possessed. In addition, his emergence brought to light the pressures that are placed on children of public figures, which in turn raised significant questions regarding the role that children play in shaping public narratives. The candor displayed by Barron was interpreted by supporters as a demonstration of the resiliency of the family, while critics saw it as additional evidence of Donald Trump's desire to engage in transactional activities. Whatever the case may be, Barron's voice, which was thoughtful and introspective, brought a rare sense of nuance to a political landscape that was highly unifying. His influence, despite the fact that it was unexpected, is poised to leave an indelible mark on the evolving legacy of Donald Trump. In addition, would you tell us what you think by leaving a comment below? Following the victory in 2024, what are your thoughts on the admission that Barron Trump made about his father? We are searching for your response. We appreciate you watching, and we hope to see you again soon.